Yo, peoples, Kyushu92 here. I'm about to talk about what I consider to be one of the best Star Wars movies ever made. But firstly, the cue from that last scene. Oh, that scene was so awesome! Oh, I was sitting there in the theater. Okay, let me go from the beginning. Okay, so it doesn't. Okay, spoilers. I'm going to be talking about Rogue One. But it was so awesome. I mean, I liked that more than Force Awakens, and I thought The Force Awakens was a good movie. But I was watching Rogue One with my entire family. All five of us went to go see it. I believe it was Friday, because we were all off from work on that day. But we all went to see it. I was literally on the edge of my seat. So many Easter eggs from previous movies, like the original trilogy, and even some references from the TV show Star Wars Rebels and Clone Wars. Oh, yes, such a good movie. Let's start at the beginning. So, we start out on the opening planet. It doesn't open like the regular classic title scroll of the Star Wars mythos that we're all used to. It just starts out with Rogue One, and then we're right into it. So we see Jyn Erso when she's a kid, and we also see her father. I forget her father's name, Kanan something. It started with a C. I'm sorry, I forgot. But I was watching it, and then we see like this Imperial shuttle fly in, and then they come down, and you see these death troopers. Like, they don't even speak like regular stormtroopers. Their voices just sound all mechanical. And I have to look into whether they actually are living people or not. But we see Director Krennic. We see him coming there to get Ursul's father. Sorry, eating pizza. But come there to get her father, or at least kill him, from what I believe, because he's helped make the Death Star. But it's not called the Death Star until a little later in the film. We see that his mom, her mom, Jyn Erso's mom, doesn't want him to go, so she attempts to get in a standoff with a Imperial officer that has 4 other Death Troopers with him. Not smart, lady. I admire your bravery, but that was not a smart move. After that, of course, her mom gets shot and killed. Jyn Erso, still young at the time, is there to see that. Then she's told to hide in a hidey hole deep in the mountains away from the Death Troopers, and of course the Death Troopers don't find them because Stormtroopers are great at doing anything. Right. So, we then cut to her being older, inside of an Imperial jail cell, then being transported on one of those classic clone tanks, like those big ones we seen back in Star Wars Episode 3, but it's been completely wiped clean with a paint job. It's all gray, as per the usual Empire color scheme, black and gray, and anything that looks bland. So there's that. Also, we also see the introduction of, well, really her when she's older. Then she gets breaking. It's actually the tank that they're using to transport the people. It's actually like a prison barge type thing. I wouldn't call it barge because it's basically a prison tank. But it also gets under attack by some rebels. They break her out. She then breaks the rebels that break her out and attempt to run, where she's handled by one of the best droids I've ever seen since C-3PO, R2-D2, and BB-8, Queso! So, she's immediately grabbed in the air, so casually, and slammed into the ground. Oh, it was so funny. And she's knocked unconscious. She wakes up, and we get to see her being introduced to classic people that we see from previous films, like the lady, I forget her name. I don't even know her name. The lady that played Mon Mothma in, I believe, episode 3, I believe. Episode 3 it might be. Episode 3. I'm trying to remember. But the lady that played Mon Mothma before, she reprises her role as Mon Mothma. And then we see other officials. We even see Bail Organa. Oh, snap! A moment. Literally, I don't know how many days passed during the course of Rogue One, but that is the last time you see Bail Organa alive. Spoilers, he dies. And we get to see other people. We see R2-D2. I'm just cutting straight to it. I'm just, because if I try to talk about the entire movie, then there's going to be so much. But, actually, you know what? Forget it. We're going to do it. So, we start to be introduced to all the other people, and then we start to see, I don't know who's playing the body of the Tarkin. I don't know who it is, but they have very good body language as far as how Tarkin behaved in the original trilogy. But of course, the actual actor who played Tarkin had already passed away some time ago. So they brought him back with CGI, like CGI makeup in his face. Now, it is not, I'm gonna be honest, it's not that noticeable, but you do notice that it's CGI. But it's not so noticeable that it actually takes away from the character itself. Some people may not approve of it, but I actually thought it was okay. As is the next person that we see that has CGI faces, which I thought was really well done. So we get to see a little banter between Krennic. There's like a little small rivalry between Tarkin and Krennic. Of course, Tarkin has the much better approach when it comes to one-upping people in words. I mean, he has Vader on his side, so he knows how to choose his words carefully. I mean, it's Vader we're talking about. If Tarkin didn't know how to keep his mouth shut, he would have been force choked years ago. So we see a little banner between them. Then we start seeing all these people get recruited. Then we see the Poe Dameron of the group, though the very one-sided Poe Dameron of the group. I really forget their names. I forgot all the names. There's just the last scene in the movie has been on my mind ever since I've seen it. I can't think of anything else. Who's this person? Oh, that's the pilot person of the Rebels. Who's that person? Oh, that's Donnie Yen. That's the only name that I know out of everybody in the film. And, well, him and James Earl Jones. And Mads Mikkelsen. Or Michelson. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. But everybody else, it was cool. Their moments was cool. Like when they were meeting everybody during the course of the film. I mean, it's easier to piece it together, this whole movie together, so that's why I'm sort of trying to cut it short. But it's easy to remember the moments that some of them had, but it's not as memorable. You can remember them, but it's not so memorable like there's feelings with it. This is my opinion. I liked all the characters, but I felt that they could have spent just a little bit more time with them. I'm just saying that. I just think that they could have spent a little bit more time, maybe like a backstory or something. Maybe even a hint of a backstory. Just a little bit. Especially the guy that had that giant Gatling gun pack on his back who has dead shot perfect aim. I mean, if you watch the movie, there isn't a single wasted shot that he fires. Every single one of those bolts is going into some dude's head or chest. So that dude has to be the most accurate person I've ever seen firing an automatic weapon in Star Wars. So we meet all the crew, we meet everybody in the crew, then we see Forrest Whitaker as the crazed guy as a crazed old man. He used to be, what's his name? Soul? I forget his name. He was in Clone Wars in the 3D animated show. And for those who've seen that show, they know that he lost his sister during one of the episodes where both Anakin and Ahsoka were trying to, I guess, help them get their home from CIS occupation, separatist occupation. And in the process, his sister is killed because at one point she almost falls off a cliff. Then Ahsoka starts to use the Force to save her. Then a spider droid of some kind, or some droid or some tank of some kind, fires a shot near them. Ahsoka loses her concentration, and Soul's sister falls to her death. Actually, let me make sure I'm reading this right. Saw Gerrera. It was something. I forgot what his name was. I'm trying to look it up. Where you at? By God, was this an awesome movie. Oh, boy. But, Forrest Whitaker, who do you play for? Saw. His name was Saw. I knew it was something. Saw. It's Saw. So, he was playing Saw. So, Saw's sister, during the course of that episode, Saw's sister dies. And this sort of leads him down the road that he becomes like this radical person. He becomes this radical, I wouldn't say rebel, but I say he becomes so radical that the rebellion he was once part of, like the whole Rebel Alliance, they no longer wanted him part of his crew because he was so out there in his tactics. So he's off by himself, and an Imperial pilot that worked with Jin's dad, Galen Erso. I remember his name now. Galen Erso. Galen Erso has actually constructed the weakness that is found in A New Hope just for the sole purpose of the Death Star being destroyed. So we do not have R2-D2 to thank for bringing the plans there. Not Luke for shooting that lucky shot into the Star Destroyer. No, we have Galen Erso, the man who made that weak point, to thank for actually saving everybody. Because if he didn't construct that thing, everybody would be dead. Everybody on Yavin 4 would be dead. Everybody that tried to take down the Death Star would have died, including Luke probably. We probably wouldn't have any more Star Wars movies had Galen Erso not put that weakness in that Death Star. So Galen Erso, thank you for saving the galaxy. We thank you for everything. So, I'm actually looking at the line of the cast here, so it's easy for me to remember all their names. Yes, and now I know who played Mon Mothma. Genevieve O'Reilly played Mon Mothma. And so that's who played Darth Vader. Interesting. But see them meet the crew, then they find out, hey, let's go down to this planet and see if we can save your dad. While at the same time, the Rebel Alliance has Captain Cassian Andor. Has Andor go down there so they can actually kill Galen Erso, Jin's dad. Just because he's seen as a liability. So, at that point, the Rebel Alliance also sends their fighters to go down there and kill the dad. And I'm skipping a whole bunch of things, but during the course, we meet up with Chirrut Imwe, which is essentially the blind Jedi dude. He's not actually a Jedi, but he might as well be. We meet with Chirrut and we meet with Baz, the automatic perfect shot guy. So we meet up with them, then they join up with them, then they travel down to the planet to rescue her dad, because he personally left a message for Jyn Erso and for Saw, telling them that they built a weakness in there, and how much Galen Erso loves his daughter, calls her Stardust. It's sweet. So after they go down to the planet and attempt to free her dad, Andor and the escaped Rebel pilot, or the defected Imperial pilot, go down to scope out the place while Andor is secretly there to pull a bullet inside of Galen Erso's head. So afterwards, Jyn Erso decides to go out on her own, and she's climbing up the sheer side of a cliff underneath the landing deck of the building. I mean, she must have the only thing on her mind must be, I want to see my dad. Don't look down. I want to see my dad. Don't look down, because I will die and this movie will be over before I get to see my dad again. So, arm strength, nice, good one on you, Jyn. Then, during that point, the Rebel Alliance send their own fighters to take out that entire facility that Rogue One has gone down to. which is a whole band of all the main characters that, well, I'll get to that. So, rebel pilots get there. Rebel pilots get there, and they start shooting up the place. At which point, Jyn Erso reveals herself to be the daughter of Galen Erso from so many years ago to director Krennic. I cannot speak with these names. So, in the process, Galen Erso is killed, and there's not that much of a sentimental moment to dwell on too long, because it's like your classic Star Wars death. They have their final word and then they die. Then the person they care about loiters there for a little bit before they leave, as it is in every single Star Wars movie. First movie, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn. Qui-Gon Jinn says something, Obi-Wan loiters and stays there with him. In episode 2, Shmi Skywalker dies. She says some words to Anakin, and Anakin stays there and loiters there with her. In episode 3, I don't think there really was one. There were multiple, but they were sort of halfway. But throughout the film, it was oh man, this movie was so good. I can't focus. I'm sorry. But this movie, there's so much in this movie, so many Easter eggs, so many nuances to other Star Wars titles that tie in so well. And so during this point, I think before that time, Jyn Erso is brought before the Rebel Alliance. And if you pay attention, during when they're exiting to go save her dad before he dies, you hear over the intercom General Syndulla report to this hangar bay. And those who watch Star Wars Rebel knows that General Syndulla is a member of the Rebel Alliance, who is also known as Hera Syndulla, aka the Twi'lek? Yeah, she's the Twi'lek. I forget her placing with her father, but she's the Twi'lek. She's the green Twi'lek pilot of the Ghost of the Rebels main story crew. So that was a nice touch there. I'm so glad I've pretty much caught myself up with all of Star Wars Rebels right now. So good. So that's a nice nuance. We see C-3PO and R2-D2. Anthony Daniels has not lost it at all. All these years of constantly playing C-3PO, and he doesn't sound any different than he did back in 1977. So this dude's voice, you can't even tell that he's gotten older. He sounds the exact same. And how long has it been? Over 30, 40, 50 years? I can't remember. But still, this dude is still going on as C-3PO, and it's so nice. It was a nice touch. And afterwards, after all that happens, I'm trying to remember what else happens. Oh, right. Death Star was finally being constructed. I know I'm getting a bit disjointed. I apologize for that, but I'm just trying to remember all the juicy details. We see the Death Star's laser aligning disc. I don't know what they call that. Crater laser. The crater laser. They put that in. We finally see that being put in for the very first time. And you get the sense of the immense scale of it, because before we see that scene, we see a Star Destroyer coming out of its shadow. And it is moving so slow. And then it pans out. Well, not really pans out. The screen changes to an even bigger view of the Death Star. And the Star Destroyer that's next to it is so minuscule next to the massive dish that's being put in right beside it. And you sort of get this gravity and scale of it all, because we've heard of it in the original trilogy when it says, well, it's like a small moon. Well, we see that, but we don't really get that big of a sense of size, because we've seen Star Destroyers so many times that we've gotten the scale of it. But to see it scaled up next to a Death Star, we finally see just how we see the full scale of it. Like, this thing is massive, and it's all constructed. Like, how many years did it take them to build this thing? But that's just another cool detail. We also see the first appearance of Vader. Oh, the saving grace of the movie! We see him on Mustafar. Yeah, you can't tell me that lava-filled, ashy, superheated planet is not Mustafar. And I find it funny how he's made himself a home and castle in the very, very place where he finally lost himself as Anakin Skywalker and ascended to his role as Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Vader. So I don't know if something is tying him there, or that's where he has most of his rage, because that's where Obi-Wan sort of finished the amputation job that Count Dooku sort of left off. But other than that, we see Darth Vader for the first time not in his suit. Like, not counting when he was put in his first suit. We see his charred body, but we see him putting the prosthetics on. When we see him on the planet of Mustafar in his castle with one of his toadies called Vani or Vanier, or I don't know how the enunciation is with the little asterisk over the letter, but we see him talking to him, and we see him in a bacta tank, but he's actually just hanging there, like with no arms and legs, just hanging there, and you see his back and everything is pale and scarred because of all his time spent inside of the suit. But this is the first time we see him not in his suit ever since him being put into a suit in episode 3. So that was a nice reference, and he has Imperial guards standing where he is because he's at his most vulnerable point there, because he's not in his suit, he doesn't have his prosthetic limbs, and I don't know how good he is with the Force if he doesn't have his limbs. But we see that, and he meets with Director Krennic. And this is the first time we hear James Earl Jones as Darth Vader, not counting him in Rebels, I mean movie-wise, where James Earl Jones puts more than enough of himself into the role, because he actually puts his more than enough of himself in his role in Rebels, because Darth Vader in Rebels is awesome. So we see him speaking to him, and when I was in the movie theater, the air was just still when he came into the scene. I mean, I didn't have a whole bunch of Star Wars fans there. I know there were some there, but they weren't as vocal. But you can tell that everyone got quiet the moment the doors open. You see his shadow on the wall behind Krennic. And then you hear his theme. Bum, 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 bum. And then you see him walking through this fog with his giant cape twirling behind him. I was thinking to myself, it's Vader. I turned into the collector when he opened up the Infinity Stone. He's all like, Vader, beautiful. So that whole interaction between him and Krennic was good. Then Krennic tried to undermine Tarkin secretly in the scene, because Tarkin was actually in charge of the Death Star, but Krennic wanted to be in charge of it when they tested out its destructive power. The destructive power of one laser to be used in the Death Star is enough to nuke a side of a planet and crater in a portion of it so much that the air around it is almost permanently at bay from that blast. Because when they went on Jedha, home of the Jedi, which is also another thing that's cool, because you see broken statues of the Jedi on that planet, but when the Death Star fired on that planet and destroyed the entire city with everybody in there in one fell swoop, and then that's the amount of destruction shown by just one small amount of power from the Death Star just outwardly destroyed that planet. It was devastating and yet awesome at the same time. This is what they were going to use to destroy any planets that got in their way. I mean, we've seen Alderaan, but that was the amount of destruction that you see as far as seeing Jedha being just that one city, and it left a massive crater in the planet. I was thinking to myself, wow, I am so glad I don't live in that universe. Because if I lived on Jedha, I would have been dead-oo. So, afterwards, back to Krennic and Darth Vader. Krennic tries to undermine Tarkin since he's in charge of the Death Star, and he says, well, will you tell the Emperor Will you say that I'm in charge of this and that? And it's met by one of the most iconic and most gratifying sounds in the Star Wars universe. Someone using the Force to force choke someone. You don't even see Vader turn until after Krennic is on the ground groveling. Well, I wouldn't say groveling. When he's on the ground gasping for air, and then he just looks back. And this is the first time I think this is the first time I've ever seen Vader use a pun. And he looked at him and says, "Be careful not to choke on your aspirations, director." I'm thinking to myself, that is so awesome. And then it dawned on me later, like, did Vader just make a joke? That makes it even more awesome. But then it gets further down the line where we get to it's the third act, actually. I mean, there's so much going on. Hey, we're rebels. We're supposed to do this. Well, if we don't do it, no one will. The same, not sort of the same thing, but the way they pulled this story together, it was well done. I really thought it was really well done. Every scene linked into one another, and there really wasn't anything, for me personally, that I saw in there just added in as filler to fill in time between each scene. Each scene had a purpose, and each one of those purposes melded into the next scene and made it just so seamless, like you were carried from this scene to the next scene without feeling like, why they do that in this scene and carry on to this? It makes no sense. I didn't feel any of that during the film. It was amazing. And when we get to the third act, which is Scarif, I believe, where they have the area where it has the plans for the Death Star and its weakness, they go there. They take their merry band crew there, and some know how this is going to end. But when they get there, along with some few rebels that wanted to fight as well, they bring them with them. So during the course of it, third act land battle ensues on Scarif. And then during the point that all this battle is happening, Jin and Andor get a hold of the plans, and they make their way towards the top of this ginormous tower to broadcast the plans to the rebels who are on outside. And not to mention, there's a space battle above Scarif. And let me say, it is one of the most beautifully choreographed scenes of space battles I've ever seen. I mean, the space battle in the Star Wars Phantom Menace doesn't even compare. The second one, was there even a second one? Not really. Third one, where Obi-Wan and Anakin are fighting above Coruscant trying to get Emperor Palpatine back. Nowhere close. The space battle in Rogue One was beautiful. There was so much going on, and yet not too much where you're thinking, well, they got a whole bunch of stuff just flying all over the screen. I can't make heads or tails of it. No, you can definitely tell what's going on. And yet there's so much going on, but not too much where you don't know what's going on. It is so awesome. And I've noticed they took a lot of risks with this film, and all of it paid off. This is how you make a good film. Like, everything was good. The acting, the actors themselves, though Forrest Whitaker, his Saw Gerrera, he seemed a little bit senile. Just a little bit. But I can sort of understand due to how long he's been doing this. So I give that a pass. But the acting, the environments, the transitions, the music. And, I mean, seeing a whole bunch of AT-ATs on a planet that's not frozen, walking around, shooting up rebels and everything, and they're trying to take them down, and then you see rebels flying in through the shielded planet, and then they're fighting on the skies as well, and then you see one of the Mon Calamari captains have a Hammerhead Corvette ship come in and ram the side of a Star Destroyer and use it like a butter knife and cuts the top half of another Star Destroyer straight off. And that one Star Destroyer plummets down and destroys the shield generator over the entire planet. And that gets the plans out up to the rebels up in space. And near the end of the film, Tarkin has them destroy the entire base that's on Scarif that housed the plans. And Krennic, Jin, Andor, Chirrut, Baze, K2, every single rebel person on the Rogue One ship, everybody dies. I'm sorry, did I not say that at the beginning? Everybody dies in this film except for Tarkin and Vader. Well, everyone who was on the ground when the Death Star fired on Scarif, they die. And a couple of rebels that come up onto what I have to say is the most beautifully made end scene I have ever seen in a Star Wars film. The rebels get the plans, and they make their ways to go up to an adjacent ship that they can escape from. The hallway is dark, and all you hear is just a classic. And then you see the lightsaber light up, and then the music that goes with that scene. Oh man, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. We see Vader just go straight Sith on every single rebel trooper that was in that hallway. He's doing this with one hand. He's just deflecting them all with one hand. One hand! And there's like 7 rebel troopers in the room with him. He's deflecting it all with one hand. He grabs one dude, holds him up to the roof, still blocking, walks past him, doesn't even look back, slashes the guy that's still in the roof, and lets him drop down to the ground dead. I look back at that scene, and I'm thinking, this dude is awesome! So and then I don't know if anyone noticed, but he actually deflects a blaster bolt shot that was shot at him with his hand back to the dude who shot it and kills him with it. Like the dude shoots him, he deflects it back with his hand, and it kills it. Kylo Ren, you can eat your heart out. I don't care if you can hold a bolt in the air. Sure, it was impressive at the time, but Vader takes that bolt and shoots it back at the guy. Yeah, you want to be like Darth Vader, but you never will be. Oh, and then he kills all the other guys. He then takes all of their guns. And they're pretty much dead at that point. There's nothing more they can do. Every single one of them is killed, and they're screaming, "Help us!" And the voices in the choirs are like, "Ah, da, ah, da, ah, da, dum, dum, dum." I was looking at the scene thinking, I didn't do anything. My mouth was like this. I don't think I even blinked. The moment he stepped in, it was